So I was looking at it because when I saw the first look images as well.
ṣé àmọ́ pé gbogbo interview mi tẹ́ ṣe lórí House of Secret mi rò pé post kìíní ẹ̀ nínú train ẹ̀ kàn post ẹyọ kan mo rántí mo kàn sọ fún yín.
Let us start what we have come here to do. The beast is no more.
Uzor Arukwe is the actor you have worked with the most. We did this analysis recently, and we saw that, and now you've added to the film is your collaboration with them. Why do you enjoy working with him so much?
Uzor Arukwe. This is interesting because until Nollywire did that analysis, great analysis, by the way, we didn't even know, that, we had worked with him for that long. I wouldn't put a particular reason to it, but all I know is that the first time I worked with Uzor, I was a director. It was a film called Two Steps Back, a long time ago, with producer Udo Akugwamanam. And I think that was it, For us, there is one thing to be talented, but there's another thing to just be a fantastic human being. Someone who wants to make the film with you. Uzor represents that kind of actor. Once Uzor is on set, he becomes family immediately. He understands the craft. He respects what we're trying to do. And I particularly like Uzor because you get a sense that he wants to try new things. So when we're looking for who to try new things with, whether it's with, that dark, edgy crime thriller like Criminal, or the funny films that we've done with him like PTC, Prophetess, you get a sense that Uzor is very, very open to trying new things. And whenever you have an actor like that, you always have them on your list anytime you're trying to do something different. So it would be a combination of great talent, great work attitude, and just being a fantastic human.
And I mean, Arbitration is one of your most, even till date, is one of your most talked about films. You are one of the highest grossing directors at the Nigerian box office. So you have a lot of laurels going for you. You've won awards, but
I haven't. It's shocking.
Really?
Continue.
Oh, okay. Your films have won. Oh, that's interesting. Would you say that Colors of Fire is the best picture you have created so far?
At Antil Studios, we like to think our latest work is our best work yet. It's kind of like our ethos. It's kind of like, the thing that drives us. Like we get on a project and we ask ourselves, like we sit down on the table and we say, what have we done before? We want to try something else. We want to do something even better. Yes, we've done quite ambitious projects. I mean, up till now, Lishabi would probably be the most ambitious in terms of just like the scale, the cost, and the ambition of it. But Colors of Fire is unique because it represents something that got me into Nollywood in the first place. I had always felt that Africa is one unit. My theory is that you can easily identify different races, but Africans are Africans. It doesn't matter whether you're from Cotonou or from Nigeria. Our stories are very similar. There's something very unique to us, but that is essentially, us. Like it's hard to replicate anywhere else. This has been a problem because our stuff hasn't traveled that much because you really need to be African to understand Africa. And I started thinking seriously about it in my early days that what will I do to appeal to a global audience but yet stay true to being African? And I started thinking about the things that uniquely define us but that can resonate, Color is something that isn't talked about much, but we were people of color. Unfortunately, when the colonial masters came, they all had black and white cameras. So most of the recordings that we had of back in the days, they were all in black and white. And, that had gotten to me for a very long time. I also know that we were people of music, art, science, and philosophy. And I was like, if we take some of those key elements, and we put it together, we might be able to make something that is truly ours, but that is international. So that was kind of like the headache, on this film. The first treatment for what is now Colors of Fire, I wrote it during the COVID period, which is a very interesting year because, I wrote a lot of things that we made after that period, within that COVID holiday. And I wanted it to be a fantasy novel. It was supposed to be a 3-part. I was also obsessed with writing a fantasy novel, and because, there was no work then. And I was doing all that research. I realized how much geometry and patterns, were interwoven in, our fabric and some of the things that define even our shrines and the like. So it's like, these are elements that I can handpick and build an entirely unique world. It's interesting because when you watch other offerings from Hollywood, the Wakandas and the likes, you can tell that that's what they're doing. They're taking things that are uniquely ours, but they're wrapping it around something that makes it easy to transport to a global world. So that is what makes Colors of Fire unique. I would say it is necessarily the most difficult, to pull off for us as a studio, but it's the most unique. It's the one that has taken the most time to develop. And the craftsmanship, this is the first time where we're putting everything we've learned, about filmmaking, about culture into one unique film.
Almost 10 years ago, almost a decade ago at TIFF, you said something. And
I said it. Yeah, I say it.
I'll read it.
I know where this question is going.
Basically, you're saying that we can't agree on one definition of what this something should be as Africans because we have so many views.
Awesome.
So do you still believe we have that problem?
So the context of what I was saying is to see that as an opportunity, right? There's a lot to Chinese, culture, but there is a consistent one we see in films. What they've done is they found some of the most exciting aspects of their culture, martial arts, the idea of wanting to revenge your master, wanting to, connect with the elements. That's something really unique, to entertainment. It's something that everyone can connect with. But that's not the only thing that defines Chinese culture. If you look at Japanese culture, for example, if you look at manga, and the video equivalent, which is anime, it's usually violent, very edgy, and all that. But the Japanese people are probably the most respectful people, and the most calm people in the world. But there's something from that culture that they've taken out. Now, sometimes these things come off as stereotypes, right? If you see a Chinese person now, you do, yeah, it's a stereotype, right? If you see an Indian person, there's a way you shake your head and you move, a stereotype. You can convert what people believe are stereotypes. You can convert them into some form of entertainment. And that's all I've been saying, that even though it feels like Africa has different voices, the world sees us as one, right? If I happen to hang out with a couple of white friends and we're out camping, okay, and we see a bear, they might be excited to hear my own thoughts on wild animals because they think I probably have seen a lion, before, not knowing that a lot of people haven't seen lions. Like, there is 99% of Nigerian kids haven't seen an elephant before or a lion, but that's not what the perception is. So let me make a movie about a kid who befriends a lion, because that is a stereotype people already have. But let me make it on a scale that is exciting. One of the things I said at that TIFF interview was something that kind of like drove why Until started making its own production. Premise. And I always like to make this example. I constantly need to make this example. Titanic. If you watch Titanic, I always like to say it's a Nigerian story. Go and watch it. It's a poor boy who sees the equivalent of the princess of a rich, wealthy, ruling class, or noble class, okay? And then this troublesome girl decides that is the boy he wants. We've done this several times in African magic, African Yoruba. There are tons of it, but when you tell it on the biggest ship that was ever made and sank, that is film. That is the reason we go to cinema. When you watch Avatar, the James Cameron one, it's really the Pocahontas story all over again. There's John Smith, he comes, he plays with the people, they think they can trust him, and then he gets them in trouble, right? Gets them in trouble, and then he brings more problem to the land. It's basically Pocahontas, But when you tell it in a world of fantasy like that, at that scale, nobody questions, the validity of it being cinema. That's where we need to get to. That's what Colors of Fire is doing. Without giving too much away, when you watch Colors of Fire, there's a similarity in some of, the classics, the classic literary works that we've had. But I decided, hey, I'm not going to tell this story on inside a small village in a small hut, with mats on the ground. I'm going to make it big. I'm going to imagine, right? I'm going to imagine a world where Black people did trade, with white people, where color was as precious as gold as we have it now. And I'm going to fabricate my story that people are already familiar with and put it in this big world. That is how Africa needs to start thinking. The moment we all start thinking like that, our films will have a unison to it. Everyone will say, oh, this must be a film made in Africa. And Nollywood is going to lead, starting with Anthill Studios.
What represents this idea, this new movement or genre you want to create in the film?
Oh, every aspect of the film. It's even more interesting. Let me give you an example. There is a dance we invented in the film called the Afefe dance. Even though we gave it a Yoruba name, Afefe means wind, right? But if you watch the dance, we broke it into like 4 different regional dances. And what I discussed with the choreographer is that almost every Nigerian culture has a female dance that is built around the movement of the hips, right? The Yorubas have their own, the Jaws have their own, the Igbos, they have their own, the Ibibios, they have their own. So they have all this, built around the hips and the buttocks. That's like a lot of our dance. So we fused a lot of all that. But you also realize that a lot of our dances were created to celebrate, the gods and the spirit. So there's a spiritual element to them. We don't dance like people without rhythm, that's a very foreign idea. There's always a spiritual element to them. So we imagined Afefe dance almost like Tai Chi, right? In this film, if you learn the Afefe dance, you can't be attacked. You just need to move with the wind. You need to get into the rhythm. And in the story, we see a bunch of girls that train every night under the moonlight, just practicing. And that's it. When you watch a Chinese film and you see Tai Chi, you're excited about it. I mean, if you do Tai Chi, no leaf is going to blow and move around you. But films make those things look very good. And that's kind of like how we're using the idea of our genre, to expand on these kind of things in the film.
So this sounds to me like, there's a definition you're trying to do. There's a defining, you're trying to already define it, so to speak. And if you were to name this idea of saying, let's take this approach, whether you're making film from South Africa or from Kenya or from Nigeria, let's take different parts of our story, of our essence, and now put it on a scale that anybody, anywhere in the world can relate to. What would you call this?
Colors of Fire is the beginning of a whole new genre, a genre that I have been thinking of for about 5 years. It's called Afrofusion. Afrofusion, in the heart of it, is the idea that you can tell a story. And when I say a story, it can be art, it can be food, it can be music. You can tell a story by bringing all the influences that are uniquely African. And you have to be very deliberate about it. When you watch Colors of Fire, there are Yoruba elements in it. There are elements from, other West African countries, hugely involved. There are Benin, iconographies in it. There are stuff from northern Nigeria in it, okay? The actors speak English and a little bit of Yoruba, okay? The leading actor is an Igbo guy, but his name is Akimbodi. The leading actress is an Edo girl, but her name is Moremi. At that point, it no longer becomes about one culture or one person. What it does, if we get our Afrofusion genre right, is that it excites everyone from outside Africa to want to know more. It's like a salad, it's like, this lovely salad where you have the best of the best of all the worlds together. And that's a genre that we're really serious about pioneering in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole. The other thing Afrofusion would do is it will break this curse of pan-African distribution that isn't happening and should be happening, right? We need to make films where one actor is Kenyan, the other actor is Ugandan, the third actor is Nigerian, and it's just one movie. And it's not necessarily tied to their nationalities. It is just people, okay, that are from different parts of the world fusing culture together. That's kind of like it. And it's a new form of art that we're doing. We want everybody to watch and say that we can combine different things together regardless of nationality, culture. We do not need to keep any culture. And I'm a cultural ambassador. It's really important that I want everyone to see culture. I'm originally Yoruba, but I am excited about the possibilities of Igbo culture, Benin, Ibibio, Hausa. I want to bring all that into a film. We can have a unified language, which is English, which we all know, or we can decide on what we want to use. But Afrofusion is the way forward. Afrofusion is the only genre that is going to be recognized internationally as uniquely African. Okojabi.
That's the first thing you post.
Shokojel mommy.
That's the first answer.
Thank you.
You are releasing this film on December 24th. I want to know, do you realize that that there are box office queens? Now, you have announced your film for December 24th. Do you feel like you have a responsibility to the industry to make sure that Colors of Fire will succeed this December?
All right, first, I would, one way to answer that question is to just track back a little bit. I did this 2 years back to back. Wedding Party 2, Chief Daddy, they were huge box office hits in December. I mean, I literally started this December thing. But that's beside the point. The work that Funke and Toyin have done is phenomenal. They didn't get there just because they were celebrities. It's not the first time a popular person is making a film. And I need this on record. They did the work. We want to do that work as well because we believe that there is an opportunity for 3 films to cross ₦1 billion at that period. We believe it. One thing Anthill Studios has done very well that people are still, they haven't given us our credit for it, is that we opened a lot of doors, both for filmmakers and even cinema. We opened the April window with Prophetess. I mean, nobody cared about Easter before we did it. We kept that streak on. But notice what happened. It wasn't just us after a while. We would make a film, King of Thieves, Ajakaju and all that. But right there was also Ajoshepo. Right there was Breaded Life, even during that time. Like, once we opened that door, a lot more people, were willing to come in. There is no reason why you shouldn't have more films during the holiday. Do I owe Nigerians a responsibility to try as much as possible to make them love and come to see my film. But more importantly, we want to put this film in December because we think that's the best time for it. We think it's a film that should be seen by everyone. We think it's a film that is perfect for the holiday. And make no mistake, it is going to sell. And I shouldn't even be the only person, bringing this competition in. There should be more people because there is a market to take care of every one of us. Lami, last song. Hey, I'm going to announce when you have proper.